Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm going to be doing another of my monthly series where I rank every movie I watched for the first time last month. Again, I want to preface this by saying that it's going to be completely spoiler free because obviously you don't know all the movies I'm getting into beforehand. It's a random mixture of movies. I don't want you to have to be fearful of any unexpected spoilers coming out. So this is all with essentially the angle of should you watch it, or maybe this is a movie tons of people already seen and I finally watched it type of thing, more so than let's get into the nitty gritty, let's get into the spoilers and all that. you know um I'm touching on a lot of movies here, and if you've been keeping up at all, I've been doing these every month since February of this year, I believe. And it bothers me that I didn't get the whole year. I literally didn't do one for January. I should have done that one right before the February one, just so I could have the whole year at least. But alas, my goal essentially after a while was let's try to watch at least 10 movies per month, and so I could at least have a at least somewhat compelling ranking. And I always try to emphasize that the rankings aren't end all be all. There are plenty of things even a month or two ago I would change the rankings around, and especially you go earlier in the year, I would probably change a lot of stuff around. But this is more gut feeling off of my first impressions, basically, with almost like at most a month removed from these movies, and only a couple weeks removed from others. So yeah, keep that in mind. With time, this could change for sure. The rankings aren't they're not set in stone in my mind. And I'll actually be doing an end of the year video where I'll rank every movie. Probably on a tier list like I've done the past couple of years, but this will be the biggest undertaking yet because it's by far the most movies I've watched in a year already, and still got a couple months left in the tank. At this point, I'm close to where I'm kind of trying to push for 200 movies this year. If I could get that nice round number, that would be big. But obviously, I'm already very happy with what I've accomplished. My goal was 50 for the year, and I'm about 160 now, I believe. And yeah, this month in particular, it's a record breaker. I my previous record was 23 movies in a month, and that was I believe the first one I did, because I was right before Oscar season, so I was trying to catch up on all those heavy hitters. And this time around, this year, I've been like, all right, let me try to keep up, be proactive with it, try to keep up to what potential Oscar contenders are, as well as just catching up on old movies I want to watch, different series, and even different releases that definitely aren't going to be Oscar contenders, as you'll see. There's a couple of these in here. But essentially, I've gotten down to a system where I'll usually alternate between a 2025 release and a random like watch list movie, because yeah, I have a 2025 watch list, which like I'm trying to cut into, but I'm always like adding one in every 2 movies or so. So it's not getting down as much as I'd like, but I am trying to keep up with the biggest ones at least. And I'm going to try to check off some of the bigger ones that I've been missing from the year as well, just so I can do, because I'll probably do a ranking of all the movies I watched for the first time, but also might do a separate video for like a top 10 of 2025 movies. We'll see what I have time for, but that's kind of what I'd like to do. Now this month, I'm talking about October, and essentially the last week I was like, oh, I should just like go all in on horror and only watch horror stuff, and even try to work in the 2025 horror films in that way as well. And that's what I did, and I really made a heavy push in this last week. If I had been doing this the whole month, I could have covered way more ground, but I covered a lot of ground even just pushing the last week. There just happened to be quite a few other horror movies I watched along the way, just because they were releases or whatnot that came up. And then it was just intentional in the last week. So there are a couple mixed in that are not horror releases. That's from those first few weeks where I wasn't really on it. But then there's a lot of horror in the mix, and horror adjacent films. So this will be an interesting ranking. All right. And we'll start with number 24, which is Love Hurts. This is a 2025 film directed by Jonathan Eusebio. Directed by Jonathan Eusebio. So I'm guessing how that's pronounced. This is his debut, his directorial debut. And it's not a good movie. I'm sorry. And I want to say that this is the most enjoyment I've gotten out of a 2-star on Letterboxd. That I gave it a 2 stars on Letterboxd, and it's the most enjoyment I've gotten out of compared to a lot of 2-star films. Because it was fun at times. Like, the action is kind of crazy, over the top, and kind of wacky. It's nice to see Ke Huy Quan here, but he could not save this movie at all. You know, it's not like he elevated it that much, and the material itself is just not anything to write home about. There's some cool backdrops for a couple of the action sequences, but overall, the love part of it, I wasn't feeling the love, more so just the hurts of it all. There's a lot of punching and action. I like that, but the actual love of it, no, the chemistry's not there. It's Ke Huy Quan and Ariana DeBose are this like conflicted couple situation going on here, but it's interesting because it's kind of like I joked it's like they're going for very progressive to go for an age gap couple like this, but then they went ahead and did not give it any sort of. There's no chemistry there. There's not enough time spent developing that at all, so it just kind of falls flat. And ultimately, I have to put it at the bottom of the ranking. It's hard for me to see otherwise. But, you know, for what it's worth, got more enjoyment out of than a lot of movies in a similar spot. Number 23 is going to be Tron Ares. This is another 2025 release. You know, Love Hurts was a catch-up from early in the year. But Tron Ares just came out in October when I watched it. We reviewed it on Tarkron if you want in-depth thoughts on that. Alec, he came in with a very different perspective, which I think was kind of wild. This movie was very much a snooze fest for me. Unexciting. Spent way too much time in the real world versus the Tron world, which is what I want from Tron. There's some cool visual stuff early on. The soundtrack, yes, it's strong. But I noticed even parts where they're doing a lot of driving, and there actually was like no soundtrack at certain parts, where I was like, I was missing some music to really ramp it up. But yeah, mostly my issue is that it's like it does kind of a basic story of following this AI, and without saying too much, it's a kind of a basic AI story from times for movies past. And it just doesn't work for me at all. Mostly because we're not getting a lot of fun in the Tron world, which is what I was looking for. Because going into this, we watched the previous 2 Tron films, which the other one is in here. The original Tron, just because of how things get cut off, was in my previous ranking. But Tron Legacy is also in here. I wasn't huge into those movies, but I thought there was potential with the 2025 Tron film. I was like, all right, we're more technologically advanced than we've ever been. Like, movies look better than ever, and it's not even close. You know, the technological leaps we've taken, even in the past decade, it's insane. So I was so ready for the visual feast of Tron Ares and just like letting myself have it, and it just wasn't there. You know, they had a couple cool stuff. They had a couple cool things, but nothing remarkable, and definitely not consistently through the film. I do still want to shout out that opening Disney sequence, Tronified, really cool. Tron Ares was directed by Joachim Ronning, by the way, which who he directed Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Men Tell No Tales. Amidst some other movies I haven't seen, one of the Maleficent movies, and nothing else I've seen. But yeah, not a fan of the 2 franchise films he's directed. Though it looks like the shots are generally really pretty well done, you know. I don't know if the directing was the issue necessarily, more so than the content, the script, and everything. Well, it stars Jared Leto, which was not the issue for me. And people try to hand wave like, oh, they're just saying you don't like it because of Jared Leto. No, it's not that at all. I have no issue with separating the art from the artist, and whatever. Jared Leto he's fine in here, and didn't bother me at all. It was the movie that bothered me. It also stars Greta Lee, it's cool to see her. I don't think she did anything special with this, but it's cool to see her. I haven't seen her in much aside from Past Lives, which I just love that movie. So number 22 is The Monkey. This is another 2025 release I was catching up on, and it's directed by Osgood Perkins. It's kind of a weird like horror with comedy aspects to it. It's one of those horror films where it's like, oh, we're not taking ourselves seriously, so it's supposed to be goofy and like self-aware in that way. It felt stupid to me. I know the movie knows that it's stupid and it's trying to be stupid in some ways, but it just wasn't effective for me in the way that some others are. There's actually one I'll name a little later in the ranking that worked better for me. But really, I didn't feel anything. I didn't connect with this movie at all. It did not work for me at all. And I admire for trying something, but it just didn't work for me. It's almost like, I watched all the Final Destination movies earlier this year, and this is very much like that. It's like going for a Final Destination style mixed with an actual horror element, like horror as the predominant genre, but very much Final Destination. And it's like we know a death is about to happen, and what kind of outrageous way are they going to die. And the kills didn't do anything for me either, honestly. And so, yeah, it doesn't even I already have Final Destination, which does it better. And, it just didn't work for me. Number 21 is Death of a Unicorn, another 2025 release that I was catching up on. And it was one of those that it fell into the category. It was on my 2025 watch list, but it was also got a horror genre to it. Doesn't fully commit to the horror genre. There's some silliness here as well. Works a little better than The Monkey for me. I didn't hate this movie at all. I just think it was not really very remarkable. It's directed by Alex Sharfman. It's also his first film he's directed, and that's cool. Jenna Ortega's cool in this. Paul Rudd's pretty cool. I mean, they're effective in their performances. Ultimately, Will Poulter is the standout performance here. Like, he actually really elevates the film. He elevates any scene he's in. He's not like a likable character, but a very fun performance. Overall, there's a couple sweet moments thrown in there, but overall, it felt pretty middling for me as a film, and almost every plot point that came up as like a major plot point felt highly telegraphed, and as a result did not land for me in the way that it seemed like they were going for. The horror elements themselves don't come out until like halfway into the film, and even then they don't really work for me. So it's ironic. There's a couple of films like this in here that I watched because it was horror for the month of October, and they didn't really translate to the vibe I was looking for, but that's okay. There's definitely horror in here. The second half is just not super strong. Number 20 is Good Boy, a 2025 film, but this is when I watched in theaters. It is the feature-length directorial debut for Ben Leonberg, and I think it was okay. It wasn't amazing for me, but it wasn't bad at all. There are elements of it that I really liked. You essentially follow a dog in a horror film. It's just a dog and its owner, and that's pretty much it. There's not much of a cast here, and even the owner, you don't see much of his face too often. It's very much focused on the dog and the horrors that the dog is witnessing, and it's cool. And I had way more appreciation from a thing that they actually included and tacked on right at the end of the film, which was some behind the scenes, which I think this was really important for them to do, because I immediately walked away with more appreciation for the film, because they essentially showed how Very much an indie production. They worked for years just to get every shot they needed out of this dog. The dog, when you're watching the film, is like, man, that's a really good actor dog, actually. It feels like he's expressing and stuff like that. But then when you get the realization of the behind the scenes and how it's like it took so long just to get these takes out of him, they've been working on it for years. And I liked how he highlighted this like part of film history where he showed, I forget what the clip is called, but it's an iconic, clip where it's like a man, it shows a man's face and then it cuts to something positive, and then and it shows a man's face and it cuts to something negative, and you just get two completely different emotions out of that clip just from the juxtaposition of the clip that precedes it. And the director Ben essentially said that's a lot of what he did with Good Boys, where the dog seems like an amazing actor, but really it's just you're seeing creepy stuff, so it looks like he's distressed when really like off screen is like them dangling a toy or whatever. It's just like these little things definitely give me more appreciation for the film. Overall, it wasn't like the most amazing film, but it's a nice indie film effort. But shout out to Indy, the dog, who did put in a good performance. No matter how it came about, it was a good performance. Number 19, VHS Halloween 2025 film. Wow, we got a perfect streak going here of 2025. Unfortunately, at the bottom, but we're already at number 19. We're not at bad films. These are okay, pretty good. Not great films in my opinion, but already so the bar's pretty high in terms of where we go up from here. This is a film I just seen that came out and people were watching, and in the Halloween spirit, it sounded like a fun idea. So I wanted to watch it. I actually had no idea the VHS was a series that has like 12 films in it or something crazy like that, which now I want to go back and watch some of those. But you can definitely watch this. Is very much, it's a self-contained, it's like an anthology thing where it's, even in the film itself, there's multiple different stories that aren't connected. And so the series at large is not connected. But you know me, I like to, I'm kind of anal about watching things in order usually. So if I had known that, I probably would have held off until I watched all the VHSs leading up to it. But essentially, the idea is it's a collection of different videotapes of these horror stories of like found footage. And these are all Halloween themed found footage, so very much in the spirit. Definitely matched the vibe I was looking for, 100%. But by its nature, there was 6 different stories within this film, and so some really worked for me while some really didn't. And so naturally, it kind of evened out to being okay film to me, but one I would gladly rewatch, and just I'd be fascinated to see different people's reactions to the different stories and which ones they liked more than others. For me, Kid Print was at the top just because it was the most effective, actually creepy, and like made me feel something watching it. But obviously the different stories in here weren't all trying to accomplish the same thing. There's some very goofy ones like Fun Size, which didn't really work for me. I know some people really liked that one, but it just didn't work for me. It was a little too goofy. There's elements I really do like about it, and then elements are just like so goofy that it's too much. Coochie Coochie Coo, which is a crazy name for a film. That one was very creepy. It was effective at what it was doing. Home Hunt was fun as well. There's some fun ones in here, but then there's a couple that didn't do much for me. And it kind of lost me when I got to Fun Size. This one, on a rewatch, I might appreciate more. But really, like, once we got to the Fun Size segment, it took me out because it was really long and didn't work for me. It was a little too goofy. But yeah, there's multiple different directors for this. Obviously, it's a nice collection. I like it. It's a great film to watch for the season if you want to get into that vibe, for sure. And I really would like to watch the other VHSs now, so wouldn't be surprised if they pop up sometime in these next few months. Number 18 is breaking our 2025 streak just for a little bit. It's Tron Legacy. 2010 film, directed by Joseph Kosinski. And this is easily my favorite of the Tron films. I still don't think it's a great film. I think it's an okay film. And the plot is really just, again, the characters I can't connect with these Tron films. There's nothing there really. Because even like Cora, who is like supposedly like a cool, fun character, is not really much to her. She really is just kind of like, it's Olivia Wilde, and she's in this cool, this cool Tron outfit, and that's about it. It's like, okay, that's cool. But yeah, overall, it's visually, it's a lot of fun to look at. It's a lot more to as a film, it's a lot more competent than the original, but still not remarkable. And the most glaring thing is that horrific CGI de-aging shit they did with Jeff Bridges. It's truly horrible. It was not, yes, like technology's progressed a lot. Before the time, it was not good. Like no one was saying at the time, like, oh man, that looks amazing. To have PS3 graphics on the big screen, like it's not going to be amazing then. It's not going to be amazing 15 years later, that's for sure. So just a bad idea all around, because what otherwise is a really visually fun film to watch, it takes you out of it, because I wouldn't be immediately like, oh man, this is an old film if I saw it otherwise. But that de-aging shit was like so cursed that it's like, okay, well, it must be. It must be a 15-year-old film at least. But yeah, it's a pretty fun movie though. I can't deny I had fun with it. Number 17 is the 2025 film Kiss of the Spider-Woman. This is a film I didn't know much about. I didn't know it was an iteration of a story or film that has been done previously. I didn't know that. I just knew that Jennifer Lopez was in it, and I remember early on, before it had gotten a theatrical release, there was a little bit of buzz, like, is this a Jennifer Lopez Oscar performance? And upon watching it, I'm like, no. No, the movie's not bad by any means. There's a lot of great stuff here, but Jennifer Lopez really isn't the highlight of the film. She doesn't really display any sort of acting range, so kind of crazy to even consider her in any sort of Oscar conversation. I doubt that's happening. But I mean, she's fine, but she essentially plays a character. You have two characters in a prison. They're like political prisoners, and the film essentially revolves around them talking and their relationship, like getting to know each other, knowing more about each other, and like everything that goes on with that. That's the highlight of the film. But one of the characters is essentially telling the story of one of their favorite movies back home, and Jennifer Lopez plays the starring role of that movie within the movie. So it's like a side plot in which some of the characters find their way into the movie version. There's some fun stuff with it, but overall the movie shines when it's focused on the two main characters and their interactions, and that's what it's all about. The movie segments were fun. Oftentimes they're fun. There's a little bit of musical numbers, but they didn't really do much for me. This film is directed by Bill Condon, who wrote The Greatest Showman, who directed some Twilight films and the Beauty and the Beast live action remake. Kind of a random mix, but it kind of makes sense considering the tone of the film when you get into it. But yeah, it stars Diego Luna, who was cool to see, and Tonatia, who is someone I didn't know about, so I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it exactly. Just a one word, Tonatia is their name they go by. And he hasn't been in much, but he was strong here. He carried a lot of this film with the range that he displayed. So like he's the highlight here. And again, I was conflicted coming out of this. I'm like, it was like a 3 to 3.5 star film for me. I was back and forth on it. Ultimately landed on a 3 star. I wouldn't say it's a great film, but it was good. It was decent. Number 16, I Saw the TV Glow. This is a film from last year, directed by Jane Schoenbrunn and starring Justice Smith. I want to first applaud the director, the creative vision of the film, and the messaging. And I want to make that very clear. I love the messaging of the film. I think it's very important. And I completely get why it resonates so much with a lot of people. For me, I had to be honest, though, upon the first watch, it just didn't hit the same. And I think especially conceding if I didn't know the director's intentions with the film and what like the hidden meaning behind a lot of things, it definitely wouldn't have hit even as hard for me as it did. And even still, I just some of the stuff didn't land. This like the story itself, well, the plot wasn't as strong if you don't consider the outside elements and kind of the symbolism worked into it. I think aesthetically and the score in tandem are really perfect for the film. It's a really cool aesthetic, cool vibe overall. It's strong. And I absolutely want to applaud the director for a bold creative vision that didn't entirely work for me 100% of the time, but I applaud it nonetheless because it's very different and it's memorable, that's for sure. And it's one of those films where I was like, if I watched it again upon a rewatch, I might appreciate it more. You know, I kind of like gonna keep that in the back of my mind as a possibility. It's not an inherently light film, so it's one of those things where if I spend more time thinking about it, it might go up for me, you know, my opinion of the film. Number 15, 28 weeks later. Yes, I watched all the 28 laters this month. I thought about making a separate video for that, saying like I watched every 28 later, just because it's funny that it's like you would probably just call it the 28 days later series, but it's just always 28 something later. And I'm so conflicted on some of these films. You know, they're sprinkled out throughout this ranking, but I'm really not 100% on where I land with all three of these, because in a lot of ways they're very different, especially the third one's very different from the first two, but there's big differences between all three of them that it's hard to even say how I would rank them. But this is where I wound up right now with 28 weeks later at the bottom, and I still didn't hate the film. There's a lot of stuff I really liked about it. It's directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, who I hadn't seen any of the films he's directed before. I'm not a fan of the direction of this film. Just like I'll get to with the original, I'm not a huge fan of some of how they did the shots there, but this one was even more like the frenetic energy, which I wasn't a fan of in the original. It's dialed up even more in this film. Just like shots that are just like just shaking camera all over, shocking, like barely even see what's going on. Like it was kind of annoying to me at times. And there's like some compelling stuff with the story here. They do some interesting things, you know, and some things really hit, and it's cool the direction they took. But then at the same time, I can't get over some of those shots that are crazy. And then a particular helicopter scene, which you'll know if you've seen it, really took me out. And that did a number on this film for me as well. But cool, some cool performances. Jeremy Renner as a performance in here, which I thought was cool. Harold Perrineau, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but he played Michael in Lost, so that was just cool to see him there. Fun performance. But obviously, most of the film, it's carried by Robert Carlyle and Rose Byrne, are two of the older characters. The children are more of a focus as well in the film, kind of the heart of the film. But yeah, ultimately, I'm so conflicted on this film. I was undeniably engaged all the way through. It's a much like it's paced so much differently than the original, but it's kind of cool. It's like it's kind of keeps you moving along, and in that way you don't get bored at all. But for now, it's going to be at the bottom of the 28 laters for me. Number 14, Gremlins 2, The New Batch. This is a 1990 film directed by Joe Dante, which is an interesting departure from the original. Hearing some of the backstory is interesting, that it was like, essentially they gave him free reign to do what he wanted, and he just like fucked around with this movie, essentially. You can check out my review on Tarkaron that we did of this and the original for more detailed thoughts. But overall, I'd just say it's kind of more of a mindless film. So it's hard for me to make it go much higher than this for me. Even here, it might be a little too high. But it is fun. It's essentially, you take the bar shenanigans of the Mogwai in the original film, and that is the entire film of this one. Just that same energy. There's a couple things in here, like a Donald Trump guy and Hulk Hogan in a movie theater, which were like wacky things at the time that are just like, they age like absolute shit now. It's just like, it's like, okay, we're doing this now. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Number 13, 28 years later. Yes, this is the 2025 film. This is the reason I watched the other 28 laters, because I had heard so much buzz about this one. Of course, I wanted to watch the first two leading up to it. And it's like, I want to watch it all in 1 month. And for October, that's perfect. Directed by Danny Boyle. This is very interesting. Very much a departure from the first two. It's almost like not even very connected. It feels like a completely different film, because even the infected operate in a completely different capacity. It's not even the same vibe of like the infected. So again, it's hard to say. There's some really good stuff here, like the cinematography, overall the production is really good, like the infected look really good. A couple of cool performances, a nice Ralph Fiennes in here. Like, there's cool stuff in this film. But I will say overall the characters weren't as gripping as maybe the previous two films, and overall just very much felt like a separate film that's trying to do different things than the first two, which is cool. And there's cool production design, cool practical effects, like a lot of cool stuff here to enjoy. But for now, I have it still below the original, because it just wasn't quite on the level of how some other people felt about this film. Some people have talked about this film like it's one of the best of the year. It's not that for me. There are plenty of swinging dicks in this film if you like that sort of thing, though. So absolutely kudos for that. More dicks than you've ever seen in all the 28 laters. Number 12, The Muppets Take Manhattan. Yes, I'm still making my way through the Muppets films. This is a 1984 film directed by Frank Oz. Classic, iconic. And so when I watched it was just the first Muppet movie last month. And then now this one, I've watched a couple. I've already watched one in November. So I'm slowly making my way through this series. I want to try to finish out the whole Muppet series before the end of the year. But yeah, I mean, The Muppets Take Manhattan is my least favorite of the Muppets movies I've seen so far, but even then, it's still a lot of fun. And it's like the perfect example of literally The Muppets Take Manhattan. It is what it sounds like. And it just thoroughly convinced me that, wow, the Muppets you can put them in any situation, any scenario. You'll see next month The Muppets Christmas Carol, and it just works every time. Almost like it's so consistent. I don't know why this movie series is so damn consistent for no reason, but it is. Some funny antics in here, just not as strong as the first two films for me. I don't think there's like anything in particular that stands out as like a glaring flaw of the film. It just didn't quite work for me on the same level of the first two. So that's why it falls at this spot. Number 11, Hard Eyes. This is a 2025 film, which is the one I referenced earlier when I was talking about the monkey, where this is one where it's being very much self-aware that it's silly and it's over the top, but also with the horror genre. And for some reason, this one just really worked for me. Even on the several people that I follow on Letterboxd, there's not very many high reviews of this film. So I might be. It's more common that it kind of went the way of the monkey for a lot of people, but for me, it really worked. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I haven't watched the Scream movies yet, which I've heard people say, is very much like the Scream movies have already been there, done that sort of thing. Maybe that's why. But the whole rom com mixed with horror was a really fun combination for me. And while it's not like the perfect piece of cinema, I'm not saying that. But generally, it was pretty effective. It was starting to lose me a bit towards the end. The writing was hit or miss at times. Some of it was a little bit too much. But overall, I thought it was fun. Olivia Holt's performance actually was really charming to me. I thought it translated really well to the film. And Mason Gooding is not bad either, which like apparently he was in one of the Scream movies. So like, not surprising the crossover there. But yeah, this is directed by Josh Rubin. So shout out to you, Josh. I did enjoy it for what it's worth. Number 10 is Freaks. Now, is this a 2025 film again? No, it's not. It's actually 1932. Yeah, we don't get many of these in the mix, and I want to get more in there because, I've watched some of the big film history points. like I took film history class and I watched some of those most talked about ones from early years, but there's still so many out there, these black and white films from the 20th century that I still need to check off. This was a random one that I just saw some people were watching, and I was like, all right, let me check it out. Absolutely. It's essentially the Freaks references the circus freaks of the film and a few of these real life freaks. I say that in the kindest way possible. That's obviously how they're referred to in the film. They star in this film, and it's really cool. It elevates the material a lot. And I thought it's relatively progressive for the time and how they portray it. Obviously, it's very sympathetic towards them, and like it chastises these characters who are not too kind to them, and that's kind of what the film revolves around. I thought it was really cool. It was unfortunate to hear about the ugly laws that were in place at the time, which obviously is not directly the film's fault, but it's just kind of like a dark side of it. That's like the cast wasn't as welcomed and appreciated as they should have been. Like the cast that really carried the film of these different circus performers and everything. There's kind of like the separation on set, and there's things like that. It's not great to hear. It does put a little bit of a damper on it, but overall, I thought the film was solid and told a really nice story with a really good message, especially for the time. It would be a good message today, and it's one that translates today, even when you see something like The Greatest Showman, obviously all the years later. And so, all the more credit for being in 1932. It's directed by Todd Browning, and yeah, it's a really nice film. Number 9, 28 Days Later. That's where this comes in, the 2002 film that started it all. Look, there's some things I don't like about it. I still don't like some of the shots where it's like a little heavy with the frenetic camera work. And I don't like the overall way that this film looks. It's not great. It's like it's like a grainy camera that they use to purposely like make the quality worse for like a stylistic effect. So like I appreciate the artistic nature to it. But like I watched this on I think Pluto TV, and I was like pretty much convinced when I was watching it that it was some problem with how Pluto TV processed the film or whatever on the back end, and that's just like a low quality render of the film. But then I go on Letterboxd and hear people saying how like, yeah, I don't like their choice of how this film looks. The film looks like shit, stuff like that. Then I was like, okay, wow, okay, that's even more shocking. But I appreciated what they did with the film. It's not a zombie film, but it very much is that at its core. It's about infected, and so it's very much reminiscent. Definitely a lot of things got inspiration from this when it comes into the zombie movie genre, and even something like The Walking Dead. You can definitely see some inspiration that they might have gotten from this. This one is not as much of a breakneck pace as the second, but still very well paced. Like, it really flew by for me. I was super engaged for the whole 2 hours. I appreciated the harsh vibe that it put in. It really, like, you felt the gravity of the situation. There's some fun performances in here. Cillian Murphy. This is one of those movies you hear all the time. I heard 28 Days Later. I just hear about it, but no details. And then come to find out Cillian Murphy's in it. I never had any idea. It's one of those nice surprises. Um, Not a fan of the directing style, like I said, but for the most part, I do appreciate the vision here. The score was kind of annoying as hell, though. They kept playing the same track over and over again. It was not like the most inspired track to me, but we had to keep hearing it, and it's like, okay. But shout out to Danny Boyle, who directed this film, as well as 28 years later, which ironically was 23 years after this film. If they just waited 5 years, it would have been real cute. But he delivers two very different films, decades apart, but strong visions in both of them. I do want to shout out Naomi Harris, who was a co-star in this film along with Cillian Murphy, essentially, and she's great as well. Number 8 is The Great Muppet Caper. It was a great follow-up to the original Muppets movie. Really solid. I was impressed by how much it kind of like lived up to the original for me, because the original, I really loved it. You could see it in the previous ranking. I might have even ranked it higher now in retrospect already. I already upped the score on that to like a 4.5 stars on Letterboxd, just because I'm very fond of that film now. And The Great Muppet Caper is a great follow-up. Not quite on that level, but definitely a step above The Muppets Take Manhattan. And there's a particularly iconic bench scene in here that was just so well done. The comedic timing on these Muppets movies is unironically great. And so I'm glad I get to appreciate them now, because I probably might not have appreciated them in the same way actually growing up with it. Another strong installment, what can I say? Maybe I'll make a separate video, like going into more depth on all the Muppets movies once I've watched them all. I'm not sure. That's an idea I'll toss around. Number 7 is going to be Midsommar. All right, this is directed by Ari Aster, a 2019 film. I've heard so much about it, honestly, until finally getting to watch it. And I think this was coincidental that it just happened to be a random watch list movie that came up, if I'm remembering correctly. Or I might have picked this one, but it was coincidental early on in October that it happened to be like a horror adjacent film that lined up in this month. But I will say, upon first watching, I wasn't as impressed as I expected to be. But then upon reflecting on it, seeing some reactions, watching parts of it again, later in the month, I upped the score on it up to 4 stars at this point, and it's much more appreciated by me. There's just some cool, unsettling things they do. It's essentially a movie about a cult, and I've heard a lot of movies being compared to this movie, like, oh, this is like Midsommar type shit happening here, and I totally get it now. I've always wondered like what exactly that meant. Is like always got the vibe of something about a cult, but it's something else. Seeing it for yourself, and just the little details they do here. Florence Pugh, who's become one of my favorite actresses just to watch. She's a lot of fun to watch. I was about to say, but I don't know if it's fun, but it's a great performance. By the way, Will Poulter is in this film. Some crossover there from Death of a Unicorn earlier. You're really cool at setting. It's really effective at setting the tone and having the parallels between like the relationship that's going on with our main characters and what's unfolding here. Just some wild stuff. It's one you just kind of have to see. You should see for yourself. It's you do yourself a disservice by learning too many details of it before going in. Number 6, Gremlins, 1984, Joe Dante. Great. This is much more special than Gremlins 2. This is why it's way higher on this ranking. It's you can tell there's really something special. It's like an instantly iconic film here, just from watching it. Obviously, with full hindsight of knowing the reputation the movie has. Growing up, I knew of Gremlins and everything. Like, it wasn't an unknown factor to me, but I just never sat down and watched the film proper. Like there was definitely parts of the film, particular scenes that really stood out to me. So it was definitely on, and I was definitely around, but I never sat down and watched it through. And I totally get it. Gizmo is a great character, great design, and there's a lot of personality in these different Mogwai. It's a nice little blend of genres, which is fun as well. And the practical effects, you just can't beat those. There's something about them that just elevates them. It could be a movie from the 70s and 80s and it's still going to be timeless, whereas CGI is it's not the same way. Simply a fun time. You can check out our review on Tarkaron of that as well for more depth. Number 5 is Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. This one really creeped its way up there. Francis Ford Coppola directed this. I had no idea when I first got into this. Obviously, the director of the Godfather trilogy. You can't beat that. And also Megalopolis, of course, which I'm waiting to see. Still, I want to see that. This was really cool. I think it does a lot of things really well. It's super hyper sexualized, like just a lot of sexiness happening. Like, absolutely, it's dialed up to 10. This movie is horny as hell. That's undeniable, but it somehow just kind of works with the vibe they're going for. Dracula's always kind of had that vibe, but there's been varying degrees of the horniness over the years and different interpretations. But I say this is horny as fuck, and that's after having seen the 2024 Nosferatu film too, which I thought was as horny as it gets for a movie like this. But this was maybe even more than that, something else. And it makes me want to go back and watch Nosferatu because I feel like I didn't appreciate that as much as people did. A lot of people did at the time, and this one was just—it's really cool. I was skeptical at the start, but it kind of completely won me over by the end. The cast overall is solid and give great performances, but in particular, Winona Ryder and Anthony Hopkins loved their performances and loved what they brought to the film. Winona Ryder does a really great job at playing polarizingly different emotions. A big range that this character goes through, and Anthony Hopkins just perfect for that role. There's a lot of cool and varied cinematography. They do some fun, creative shots that I really appreciated, and overall, the film is an absolute trip. It's one of those movies. I'll say that a lot for these out there films. Like that was a trip, and that is definitely deservedly so for this. Quite a wild ride. Not going to be for everyone. Not going to be for the whole family, but I like it. Number 4, Trick or Treat, 2007 film that I've heard so much about over the years. Well, to be fair, I haven't heard much about the film itself, but I've always heard the name. People kind of say it's like in the same vein as like a Halloween Town was like a special movie growing up for a lot of people. Like I feel like this is a similar vein that I've heard this in. And then like obviously the character design of Sam I've seen everywhere without knowing the context. And honestly, interesting following Bram Stoker's Dracula up with this, because I had no idea how adult themed this film is. This has some horniness involved as well. For some reason, just like the vibe of how people talked about it, it just felt like it was probably more kid friendly and maybe more light on that kind of thing. But no, this is definitely like very much adult oriented. Some wild scenes in here, but I love how we get a bunch of different perspectives and vary the story up, and it was a lot of fun. The movie took so many turns that I barely knew. I rarely knew what was going to happen next, which was a lot of fun. It's an exciting way to watch a film. So I think it could have benefited from a more cohesive narrative, because it does feel a little all over the place sometimes. But for the most part, I like how it kept you on the edge of your seat. And that werewolf scene is something else. That's just a wild scene. You gotta see it. Trick or Treat is directed by Michael Dougherty, by the way. What did he direct? Krampus? I wasn't I wasn't a big fan of Krampus when we watched that 10 years ago now at this point. Wow. He also directed Godzilla, 2019 Godzilla. Interesting. This is one absolutely perfect vibes for the season. I would gladly throw this one on year after year. We're getting to the cream of the crop here. Top 3. Number 3 is The Witch by Robert Eggers, the 2015 film. Well, that's speaking of 10 years ago. And speaking of Nosferatu, I didn't even realize the crossover here. He directed Nosferatu, which I didn't appreciate it as much as people did, but absolutely incredible directing. So, an amazing director, absolutely, and this confirms it. The Witch has been on my list for some time now. Honestly, because I was looking for movies, because the Salem Witch Trial fascinates me. I even have a book right here about the Salem Witch Trial, which isn't The Witch, but it's The Witches, which I'm looking forward to reading. It's just been always deeply fascinating to me, and so I was looking up movies in that kind of vein, and I remember watching an expert talking about it, and they brought up The Witch. And so when I go and watch this, it's like completely not what I expected. You know, I knew there was some horror element to it, but it's like completely different than what that kind of teed me up for. But it was really, really effective at making you feel uncomfortable with how everything goes down. There's some unsettling stuff, a solid score that complements that, and they give you hints of it, but I only wish there was more of the nasty, disturbing witch content in here. Would have loved more of that. I gotta say, stellar performances from all of Anya Taylor-Joy, Ralph Ineson, Kate Dickie, and Harvey Scrimshaw. All really excellent. A couple of those are more seasoned actors, but then there's Harvey Scrimshaw, I believe, is the kid. Let me double check that. Yeah, Harvey Scrimshaw was the kid actor who was really good at carrying a lot of the scenes in this film, like, really well. Anya Taylor-Joy, this is like, she was very young at this time, probably like 18 or so, one of her younger roles that I know of. And she's great. She's great in it. But all those actors I named really do a great job and they're all this little family that we're centered on. Just great stuff. And Anya Taylor-Joy is kind of getting up there with Florence Pugh as an actress I really enjoy, and will probably be seeking out more of her movies specifically, just because I've enjoyed everything she's been in. But yeah, it's really, really well done. I loved the film. Number 2, Coraline. 2009's Coraline. Finally watched it for the first time. This has kind of been on something I've just seen, obviously, in the zeitgeist, the name around so many times. And so this is one I've been eyeing up the whole month, and I got to right at the end of the month, just to fit the vibes. You know, it's something a little different than the typical horror film as well. And man, I love this film. Stylistically, so strong. Amazing visuals. You know, you can't beat this. Like, animation style is so cool. And just really creepy stuff. Really great at setting the tone. It's really creepy, but incredibly charming at the same time. Like, such a treat. Aesthetically, it's just so solid. And it's actually a really great story with really awesome character designs. It's like a modern folk tale almost, and in all the best ways. Really executes on yeah, it's like an instantly, like, I totally get it why it's like a fond film for a lot of people, like an iconic film aesthetically. I totally get why, like, this would be for the season. You throw on Coraline, absolutely, it makes sense. And that film's number 2, only because there's one that rose above all the others, and the easiest number 1 I think I've given out ever in doing this series, and that's for Jaws. 1975's Jaws, which is my first time watching it ever. Directed by Steven Spielberg. Obviously, its reputation precedes it for time and time again, how Jaws is this amazing film, a classic film. But, you know, when you think about a film like this, I've always kind of bashed it in with a film like a Gremlins, where it's just like a classic of the time, you know, representative of that era, and just like a cultural phenomenon. And in many ways it is that, but also for me it's way above something like that. It's like legitimately might be a 10 out of 10 film for me, which I don't give out often. Like I've given out one, maybe two, but not no. I've given out one, maybe one that I maybe wouldn't even call it a 10 out of 10 for this film after 160 movies watched. Like I don't give them out often at all, and Jaws really just felt like that to me. I instantly got it. I was instantly blown away by the direction, the cinematography. I love how the structure of the film is. How we're like, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this a lot. Like the charm and the effectiveness of the film is the fact it's what you don't see. You know, they're very purposeful with how much you see of Jaws throughout the film, and they kind of they tease you bit by bit, and you get these moments that are like all the more effective just from glimpses of him that are way more effective than if you just saw him straight on from the beginning. And there's just like such iconic scenes. That one in the beach in particular is so well done. Loved how that was shot with people passing in front of him, and the chaotic feeling of it. Just so good. I don't care what anyone says. I love practical effects. I said it before. And Jaws is just one of those incredible examples. You know, there's like that in Jurassic Park. You know, these Spielberg films that just make great use of it. But just like this is supreme, top-notch tension building, and it almost doesn't get better than this. I can't give this film enough praise. It's brilliant. Some brilliant work with an iconic score to back it up. And yeah, it's rare that a movie like did so well received and talked about for years and years lives up to its reputation so much for me as this one did. Because a lot of times, you know, you're coming onto a movie. This one literally 45 years, or no, this one literally 50 years after it released. So sometimes, you know, some of the magic gets lost along the way, either just from hearing about it so many times or just from not being there earlier in his like as his reputation was being built. You kind of lose some of that shine, and so then you might be able to look back on it and be like, you know, I admire it for what it is. I can see why it was received so well, but it's not on that level for me. That's not the case for this. It's just like it was instantly okay. This is one of my favorite films of all time now, actually, and so it's so engaging, so well done. The directing is so strong, and totally get it. It deserves all its accolades and way more than it even received, honestly. Because I think with Steven Spielberg, not even directed, or something crazy for this film. Like he should have won. Like this film should have won all the awards. You know, if an equivalent of this film came out today, it would sweep all the awards. But yeah, Jaws, amazing, number one for me this month, and honestly, it's an argument for number one for this year. That's how good it is. So, thank you for watching another installment of this. Always have a lot of fun with this. October, in particular, was great because there's a lot of horror films that haven't scratched off on my list, and as you can see, there's a lot of big ones still missing. Like if you look at the franchise films, Halloween is one that I watched every film for a couple years ago, but all the other big ones I'm waiting to do. And at this point, when I was running out of time, I was like, oh, I'm not going to start a big franchise and then not have enough time to watch the others. I want to be able to watch maybe when we start the new year, be able to get into some of these bigger film series like A Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, those kinds of things, Scream. So I can actually be able to watch the entirety of the series in a year, not just like watch the first one and then get to the other ones later. So that's just kind of how I'm viewing it. But it was really fun October to really focus on horror more than anything, and so I would love to do themed stuff like that in the future. You know, December I probably won't go as heavy and like all Christmas movies, but I'll definitely try to hit some of the iconic Christmas movies I haven't seen yet. I'll definitely do stuff like that. But yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more on film, television, and reality TV. And let me know your thoughts on any of these movies that I've rattled off here. And what have you been watching recently? Thank you.